The most dangerous curses aren't the ones that kill you. They're the ones that make you forget you deserve to be loved. The autumn rain hammered against cobblestones as Kai Thorne stepped off the carriage into Ashwood, water finding every gap in his armour like searching fingers. He'd hunted curses that turned men to stone, women to smoke, children to shadows. But the serpent curse, those were different, ancient, divine punishment twisted into human cruelty. In the tower ahead, something watched him through the rain, golden eyes that held both venom and tears. They called her a monster, but monsters didn't tend gardens. Monsters didn't weep poisoned tears for the men they'd killed trying to save them. And monsters certainly didn't make his own curse. The one the priest swore was dormant, stirred to life for the first time in 5 years. "You the curse breaker?" The innkeeper's voice came from behind him, flat with exhaustion. Kai didn't turn from the tower. From those golden eyes he could feel, even through the storm. "I'm the last one you'll need to hire." Because either he'd break this curse, or it would break him. And after 5 years of feeling nothing, maybe being broken was exactly what he needed. What would you do if the person you loved believed they were too dangerous to be loved? Drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. Kai closed his journal. "I'll need a room facing the tower. You're really going to try?" "I don't try, I succeeded." He headed for the stairs, then paused. "One more thing. Why haven't you driven her out? Other towns would have burned her by now." The innkeeper's voice dropped to barely a whisper, because before the curse, she was the healer here, saved half the children in this town from the sweating sickness. "We're cowards, but we're not ungrateful cowards. We keep hoping someone like you will come along and fix what we're too afraid to face." From her tower window, Lyra watched the stranger stride through the rain toward the inn. She'd seen him from the moment his carriage crested the hill. Her cursed eyes could spot a mouse from a mile away now. Another hero come to save the monster. They always had that same walk, that same confidence that said they'd never met a problem they couldn't solve with enough courage or cleverness. She turned from the window, catching her reflection in the mirror she kept covered most days. Tonight she'd uncovered it, needing to remind herself why she stayed hidden. Scales traced delicate patterns along her collarbones, down her arms, beautiful in their own way, if you could forget they were symptoms of something monstrous. Her eyes, once brown and warm, now gleamed gold even in darkness. Her hair, still human black, hung in waves she hadn't let anyone else touch in 7 years. "Another one comes to save you," she whispered to her reflection. "How long before you kill this one too?" The first had been Thomas, sweet Thomas, who'd loved her before the curse. He'd tried to kiss her that first horrible month, believing true love could break any spell. She'd watched him convulse as her poison ate him from the inside out, held him with gloved hands as he died gasping her name. The second was Sir Garrett, a knight who'd insisted his blessed armour would protect him. It hadn't. The third, she couldn't even remember his name anymore. She'd made herself forget. 3 graves were enough to carry. She pulled on her thickest gloves, the ones that went up to her elbows, and stepped out onto her tower's garden balcony. The rain felt good on her scaled skin, almost like the tears she couldn't cry anymore. Another gift of the serpent. Snakes didn't weep. Her garden thrived despite the autumn cold. Roses bloomed out of season, their thorns growing sharp as daggers under her influence. The vegetables swelled to unusual sizes. Life and death twisted together in everything she touched, creation and destruction inseparable. A knock at the tower's base door startled her. Nobody knocked anymore. They left the food and fled. "Lyra Blackwood?" The voice carried up through the rain, steady and unafraid. "My name is Kai Thorne. I'm here about your curse." She laughed, bitter as hemlock. "Go away, hero. I've killed enough brave men." "I'm not brave, I'm skilled. There's a difference." Something about his tone made her peer over the balcony's edge. He stood in the rain without an umbrella, looking up at her with eyes that seemed to catalogue every detail, not staring in fascination or fear, observing like she was a puzzle rather than a monster. The innkeeper says you can control the transformation outside the full moon. That suggests the curse has rules, boundaries. I'd like to discuss them. Discuss? She pulled back from the edge. You want to have a conversation about the thing that's ruined my life? I want to understand it. You can't fight what you don't understand. And if I don't want to be saved, there was a pause, then I'll leave. But I don't think that's true. I think you've convinced yourself you don't deserve saving. There's a difference between being unsavable and believing you're unworthy of the effort. Lyra's hands gripped the balcony rail, hard enough to crack the stone. How dare he? The full moon is in 6 days, he continued. Give me until then. If I can't help, I'll go and make sure no one else bothers you. And if you die trying, then you'll have your proof that you're meant to be alone. But I don't intend to die, Lyra. I've broken curses that killed a dozen men before me. Yours won't be different. She wanted to tell him about Thomas, about the others. She wanted to describe what it felt like to watch someone you care about dissolve from your touch. Instead, she heard herself saying, "The door's warded. You can't come up." "I don't need to come up. You'll come down when you're ready." The certainty in his voice infuriated her. "You'll be waiting a long time." "I've got 6 days. Besides," and she could hear something that might have been a smile in his voice, "your garden is overgrowing. Those roses will strangle your vegetables if you don't thin them soon. Shame to let good food die because you're too proud to accept help." She looked at her garden, saw he was right. The roses were spreading toward her carefully tended vegetables, thorns ready to pierce the fat tomatoes she'd been nurturing. "You know about gardens?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "I know about things that grow wild when left alone too long. Plants, curses, fear. They all need pruning eventually, or they consume everything good around them." He didn't wait for her response, just walked back toward the inn with that same steady stride. Lyra watched him go, something stirring in her chest that felt dangerously like hope. She crushed it immediately. Hope was just another poison, slower acting than her touch, but just as deadly. Still, that night she stood at her mirror longer than usual, wondering what he'd seen when he looked up at her. A monster? A victim? Or something else entirely? Something she'd forgotten she could be? The wind carried the sound of him unpacking in the inn, methodical and calm. She'd had heroes full of passion and promise. She'd had knights with blessed swords and holy water. She'd never had someone who spoke of her curse like it was simply a problem to be solved, her isolation like it was just another weed to be pruned away. 6 days. She could avoid him for 6 days, but as she lay in her bed, listening to the rain and thinking of gardens growing wild, she wondered if she wanted to. The next morning came wrapped in mist, the kind that made the world feel smaller, more intimate. Kai sat at his window, watching the tower emerge from the fog like something from a dream, or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. He'd spent the night reading his journals, comparing Lyra's curse to others he'd broken. Serpent curses were rare, usually tied to betrayal or jealousy. But there was something different about this one, the way it allowed her to maintain partial control, the way it enhanced growth rather than just bringing death. It was almost as if the curse was fighting itself. Movement in the tower garden caught his eye. She was out there, tending her roses with those long gloves, her hair pinned up but still catching the weak morning light. Even from this distance, he could see the graceful way she moved, careful and deliberate, like someone who'd learned exactly how much space they took up in the world. He gathered his tools and walked to the tower's base. He didn't knock this time, just sat on the stone bench someone had placed there years ago, probably for visitors when she still had them. "I can hear you breathing." Her voice drifted down, tinged with annoyance. "Good. Means you're paying attention. Don't you have other curses to break? Other monsters to save?" "None as interesting as you." She appeared at the balcony edge, and for the first time, he got a clear look at her in daylight. The scales caught the morning sun like black opals, shifting between green and blue and purple. Her golden eyes should have been terrifying, but they held too much pain to be monstrous. Interesting. That's what I am to you. An interesting problem. You're a woman who's been alone for 7 years and hasn't gone mad. You're someone who still tends a garden that feeds the people who fear you. You're a person who locks herself away, not out of self-pity, but to protect others. Yes, I find that interesting. She laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. You don't know anything about me. Then tell me. Tell you what? How did I become this thing? How Lord Aldrich couldn't handle rejection, so he had his foreign mystic curse me? How does my skin burn like ice and fire at the same time? How can I feel the serpent under my skin waiting, always waiting for me to lose control? Tell me about the roses. She blinked, caught off guard. What? The roses. They're maiden's blush variety, but they're blooming out of season, and they're 3 times the normal size. That takes intention, skill. You're not just growing them, you're nurturing them. Why roses? Lyra's hand went to the balcony rail, fingers tracing the stone. My mother grew them. Before she died, she told me that roses were proof that beautiful things could still protect themselves. Thorns aren't cruel, they're necessary. Is that what your scales are? Necessary thorns? Stop it. Stop what? Stop talking to me like I'm human. Kai stood slowly, walked closer to the tower's wall. You are human. I'm cursed. The two aren't mutually exclusive. She moved so fast he barely saw it, one moment on the balcony, the next scaling down the tower wall with inhuman grace, landing in a crouch before him. This close, he could see the way the scales followed the natural lines of her body, could smell something like sage and copper in the air around her. You want to see what I am? Her voice had dropped to something dangerous. Fine. She pulled off one glove with her teeth, her bare hand gleaming with scales that seemed to pulse with their own light. One touch, that's all it would take. Your blood would turn to venom, your heart would stop in 3 minutes, and you'd die choking on your own tongue. Still think I'm human? Kai didn't step back. Instead, he pulled out a knife from his belt and, before she could react, drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, crimson against his pale skin. What are you? He held out his bleeding hand, inches from hers. You won't touch me. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because if you were the monster you pretend to be, you wouldn't warn people. You wouldn't wear gloves. You wouldn't have locked yourself away. You've spent 7 years proving you're more human than most people I've met. Her hand trembled between them, scaled fingers catching the light. You're insane. I'm right. Why? The word came out broken. Why do you care what I am? Because I've spent 5 years breaking curse and I've learned something. The worst curses aren't the ones placed on us. They're the ones we place on ourselves. The stories we tell about what we deserve. A tear slipped down her cheek, the first she'd cried in years. It hissed when it hit the ground, acidic enough to etch the stone. Even my tears are poison, she whispered. No, Kai said quietly, finally lowering his hand. They're just tears from someone who's been holding them in too long. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. Understanding. Not pity, not fear, not even sympathy. Just understanding from someone who knew what it was like to be transformed by pain. Have you ever met someone who saw through all your walls in a single moment? Share your story in the comments below. You said the full moon is in 6 days, she said, pulling her glove back on with shaking hands. What exactly do you intend to do? First, I need to understand the curse's origin. Not the story everyone tells, but what actually happened, every detail. And if I tell you, if I let you try, what happens when you fail? I won't fail. Everyone fails eventually. Kai wrapped a cloth around his bleeding palm, his eyes never leaving hers. My sister said the same thing. She was cursed by a witch who was jealous of her beauty, turned her into smoke that would dissipate if she ever felt warm again. No sunlight, no fire, no human touch. I spent 3 years learning curse breaking to save her. Did you? His jaw tightened. I was so focused on breaking the curse, I didn't notice she'd fallen in love with the cold, with the isolation. When I finally found the counter curse, she begged me not to use it, said she couldn't bear to be touched anymore, couldn't stand the thought of warmth. I used it anyway, thinking I knew better. Lyra's breath caught. What happened? The curse broke. She became human again, and 3 days later, she walked into a blizzard and never came back. She left a note saying I'd saved her body but killed who she'd become. His voice stayed steady, but his eyes held years of guilt. That's when I learned that breaking a curse means nothing if you don't save the person inside it too. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared pain. So you're not here to save me, Lyra said slowly. You're here to save yourself. Maybe. Or maybe I'm here because you're the first cursed person I've met who's fighting to stay human instead of giving in to the monster. Either way, I'm not giving up. She studied him for a long moment, this strange man who bled for his points and carried his failures like armor. The garden needs tending, she finally said. If you're going to sit here annoying me, you might as well help. There are gloves and tools in the shed. It wasn't trust. It wasn't even acceptance. But it was a beginning. As Kai walked to the shed, Lyra called out, "And Kai, next time you want to make a dramatic point, try using words instead of knives. Heroes who bleed out are no use to anyone." He turned back with the first real smile she'd seen from him. Noted, though technically I'm not a hero. Heroes save people. I just solve problems. What's the difference? Heroes need people to believe in them. I just need them to let me try. She watched him gather the tools, this odd man who spoke of curses like puzzles and pain like data. For the first time in 7 years, she climbed back up to her garden not to hide, but to wait. Maybe that was the real curse. Not the scales or the poison or the transformation. Maybe it was the waiting, the endless, hopeless waiting for someone who could see past the monster to the woman still fighting underneath. And maybe, just maybe, the waiting was finally over. For 3 days, they fell into an uneasy rhythm. Kai would arrive at dawn with his journals and tools. Lyra would lower a basket with tea she couldn't share. And they'd work in the garden with the wall always between them. They spoke of safe things, soil acidity, pruning techniques, the best time to harvest medicinal herbs. Neither mentioned the moment when she'd almost touched him, when he'd bled to prove a point. But the serpent curse had its own opinion about their careful distance. On the 3rd night, Lyra woke to her skin burning. Not the usual low fever that preceded the full moon, but something sharp and urgent. She stumbled to her mirror, gasping at what she saw. The scales were spreading, covering her arms entirely, creeping up her neck like living armor. "No, no, no," she whispered, trying to will them back. "It's not time. 3 more days." The curse pulsed through her veins like molten metal. She could feel it testing her control, pushing against the boundaries she'd spent years building. And underneath it, something worse, hunger. Not for food, but for connection, for the warmth she'd felt when Kai looked at her without flinching. She heard footsteps on the tower stairs, and panic flooded through her. The wards should have held. "Lyra?" Kai's voice, urgent. "The wards broke. Something's wrong." She pressed herself against the far wall. "Get out! You can't be here!" He appeared in her doorway, and she saw his eyes widen as he took in the spreading scales, the way her fingers had begun to elongate into claws. "The curse is accelerating," he said, clinical even now. "What triggered it?" "You did." The words tore from her throat. 3 days of pretending to be normal, of feeling almost human again. The curse knows. It's fighting back. Or fighting for something else. He stepped closer and she hissed, actually hissed at him. "Stay back, I can't control it when it's like this." "When was the last time you let yourself feel anything beyond fear and guilt?" "What does that have to do with—" "Everything. Curses feed on patterns. You've been static for 7 years. No hope, no change, no connection. Then I show up and suddenly you're feeling again. The curse is responding to the disruption. A knock at the tower's base door interrupted them. Not a knock, a pounding. "Lyra Blackwood!" Lord Aldrich's voice, smooth as poisoned honey. "I know the Cursebreaker is up there. How dare you let a man into your chambers?" Lyra's golden eyes flashed with rage. "How dare he—" "Don't." Kai moved to the window, looking down. "He's not alone. He's brought witnesses. Half the town, from the looks of it." She joined him, careful to keep distance between them. Below, torches flickered in the darkness. Lord Aldrich stood at the front, his perfectly styled hair and expensive clothes making him look like a peacock among crows. 7 years I've protected you," Aldrich called up. 7 years I've kept the town from burning you out, and this is how you repay me? Whoring yourself to the first stranger who— The window exploded outward as Lyra's fist connected with it, her partially transformed strength shattering glass like paper. "You protected me? You cursed me." "Lies," Aldrich turned to the crowd. "See how the curse has twisted her mind? She doesn't even remember that she was born tainted, that I tried to save her with my foreign physician." "Mystic," Kai corrected, his voice carrying clearly in the night air. "The man you brought was a mystic specializing in transformation curses. I found his records in the county archives. Jeremiah the Enlightened, executed 3 years ago for cursing 17 women who refused various patrons." The crowd murmured, shifting uneasily. Aldrich's face darkened. "You know nothing, outsider. I know you paid him 300 gold coins. I know you provided him with Lyra's hair and blood. I know you specifically requested a serpent curse because you thought it was poetic. The woman who wouldn't be charmed by you would become something no one could love." More lies. But the crowd was listening now, some of them remembering details that hadn't made sense before. How Aldrich had been so quick to arrive after Lyra's first transformation. How he'd insisted on being the one to contain her. "You want to know the real curse?" Lyra's voice had dropped to something dangerous, her partial transformation making it echo with otherworldly power. "It's not just that I transform, it's that every full moon I dream of him. The curse makes me relive his proposal, makes me want to say yes. It's trying to break my will, make me crawl to him for release." Several women in the crowd gasped, understanding the true horror of it. "But I never do," Lyra continued. 7 years, and I've never given in. Because I'd rather be a monster than be his." "You are a monster," Aldrich snarled. "Look at yourself. Scales, claws, poison. You're an abomination." "Maybe," Kai said quietly, but his voice carried. "But she's an abomination who still tends gardens, who saves her tears in vials to keep them from poisoning the groundwater, who isolated herself to protect all of you. What kind of man does it take to curse someone for saying no? Who's the real monster here?" The crowd's murmur grew louder. Some of the women were crying. Others looked at Aldrich with new eyes. "Enough." Aldrich pulled out a crossbow, the bolt gleaming with silver and what looked like dried blood. "If you won't come down and submit to the cure I offer, then you'll die as the beast you are." He raised the crossbow, and Kai stepped in front of Lyra. "Move, Cursebreaker. This isn't your fight." "You're right. It's not a fight at all. It's just a pathetic man trying to control a woman who was always too good for him." The bolt flew. Kai didn't flinch. The bolt stopped inches from his chest, caught in scaled fingers. Lyra had moved faster than human eyes could follow, her partially transformed hand catching the projectile. Where her scales touched the blessed silver, they hissed and burned, the smell of charred flesh filling the air. She dropped the bolt, her hand smoking. "You burned yourself," Kai said, stunned. "The silver was blessed to kill cursed beings, and you stepped in front of me," she whispered back. "No one's ever—" "When was the last time someone stood up for you when you couldn't stand up for yourself? Tell us your story." "This isn't over," Aldrich spat, but he was already backing away. The crowd wasn't looking at Lyra with fear anymore. They were looking at him with disgust. "Yes, it is," said Mrs. Morrison, the baker's wife, stepping forward. "We've been cowards, Lord Aldrich, letting you convince us she was the danger, but we see now. The only monster here is you." One by one, the townspeople turned their backs on him, walking away. Some paused at the tower's base, leaving flowers or notes of apology. When they were alone again, Lyra looked at her burned hand, the scales already starting to regenerate. "You would have taken that bolt." "Yes. It would have killed you." "Probably." "Why?" Kai finally turned to face her fully. "Because in 3 days, you've shown more humanity than I've felt in 5 years. Because you caught that bolt even though it burned you. Because sometimes the right thing to do isn't the smart thing." She laughed, but it was hollow. "And now, the curse is still accelerating. Aldrich's little stunt made it worse. I can feel it spreading." "Then we stop resisting it." "What?" "You've been fighting it for 7 years, holding it back through sheer will. What if instead of fighting we work with it, transform it from the inside?" "That's not how curses work." "It's not how they usually work, but this isn't a usual curse. It responds to emotion, to connection. When you saved me just now, your control was perfect despite the partial transformation. You weren't fighting the serpent, you were using it." Lyra looked at her scaled hands, seeing them differently for the first time. "I was protecting, not attacking, not defending, protecting. And that's something both human and serpent understand. Protection, care, maybe even, don't say it, love." The word hung between them like a blade. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't feel that. Not with what I am." "You already do. You love this town despite their fear. You love your garden. You loved your mother's memory enough to keep growing her roses. Love isn't your weakness, Lyra. It's the only thing keeping you human." She sank to the floor, the scales slowly receding as exhaustion took over. "The full moon is in 3 days. If you're wrong, then we'll face it together. I could kill you. You could, but you won't. You don't know that." He knelt beside her, still careful not to touch. "I know that tonight. You chose to burn rather than let me be hurt. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are." Outside, the town settled into uneasy sleep, processing the night's revelations. Inside the tower, 2 damaged souls sat in comfortable silence, neither fighting nor surrendering, but something in between. The curse pulsed between them, testing, waiting. 3 days until the full moon. 3 days to find another way. The morning after Aldrich's confrontation brought an unexpected problem. Kai woke in the inn to find his room ransacked, his journals torn apart, and a message scrawled on the wall in what looked suspiciously like blood. "Leave the monster to rot, or join her fate." He packed what remained of his belongings and walked to the tower just as the sun broke through the clouds. "Back already?" Lyra called down. But her voice held worry. She'd seen the smoke rising from the inn's direction. "Aldrich burned my room, nearly took the whole inn with it." He held up his salvaged bag. "Mrs. Morrison stopped it in time, but I'm no longer welcome anywhere in town. Aldrich's threatening anyone who helps me. So leave. You have your excuse now." "I need somewhere to stay. The tower has empty rooms." She appeared at the balcony so fast, he wondered if she'd been waiting there. "Absolutely not." "Lyra, no, do you understand what you're asking? No one has been inside this tower with me since Thomas." Her voice cracked on the name. "I can't control the curse when I sleep. I could transform partially, I'll take the ground floor. You stay in your chambers. We don't have to see each other at night. The curse is stronger at night. It whispers things, makes me dream things. With you that close, what does it make you dream?" She turned away. "Nothing. Serpent dreams, death and cold blood." "Liar." The word hung between them. Finally, she laughed bitterly. "You want the truth? Fine. It makes me dream of being human, of being touched without killing. of someone looking at me the way you did when you stepped in front of that crossbow. Happy? The curse torments me with everything I can't have. What if you can have it? Stop. What if the dreams aren't torment but possibility? Stop. What if I dream of you? The words exploded from her. Every night since you arrived, I dream of you. Your hand in mine without gloves between us. Your arms around me without fear. The curse is using you to break me, don't you see? It knows I'm starting to... She cut herself off. Starting to what? Feel, she whispered. I'm starting to feel things I buried 7 years ago. Hope, longing, connection, all the things that make the curse stronger. Kai set down his bag deliberately. Or make you stronger, strong enough to fight it. You're not listening. I am listening. You're telling me the curse responds to isolation by growing stronger, that it feeds on your loneliness. So what happens if you're not alone? She stared at him. You want to use yourself as an experiment? I want to prove that connection doesn't make you weaker. It makes you human, and humanity is the one thing this curse can't take unless you let it. Thunder rumbled overhead. The autumn storms were coming early, and within minutes rain began to pour. Kai stood in it, waiting. You're going to catch your death, Lyra muttered. Probably. That's not a negotiation tactic. It's not meant to be. Lightning flashed, illuminating her face in the window. He could see her internal battle, the war between fear and something else. Ground floor only, she finally said. There's a servant's room with a lock that works from the inside. You'll lock yourself in at sunset. If you hear me moving at night, you don't come out. If I scream, you don't come out. If the whole tower shakes, you don't come out. Agreed. I mean it, Kai. The serpent is strongest in the hours before dawn. That's when it tries to take full control. I understand. She threw down a key that landed at his feet. You're a fool. Probably that too. As he entered the tower for the first time, Kai felt the weight of centuries in its stones. The ground floor was sparse but clean, obviously maintained despite years of isolation. He found the servant's room, small but serviceable, with a bed that looked recently aired. You prepared this, he called up the stairs. I knew you'd insist eventually. You have that stubborn look, like Thomas did. Tell me about Thomas. Silence. Then soft footsteps on the stairs. She appeared at the landing, keeping the full staircase between them. Thomas was the blacksmith's son. We were going to be married that spring. He was kind and patient and thought love could conquer anything. She sat on the top step, pulling her knees to her chest. The curse manifested 3 days before our wedding. I tried to run, but he followed, said he didn't care what I'd become. He tried to kiss me, to prove his love was stronger than any curse. The poison. It took 17 minutes. 17 minutes of him gasping my name while his blood turned to venom. I held him with gloved hands and watched the light leave his eyes. He died still trying to tell me he loved me. Kai climbed halfway up the stairs and sat, leaving 6 steps between them. It wasn't your fault. I know that. Knowing doesn't make it hurt less. Is that why you won't let anyone close? Because of Thomas? Because of Thomas. Because of Sir Garrett. Because of Marcus, who thought blessed armor would protect him. Because every time someone tries to save me, they die. I'm not trying to save you. She looked up sharply. Then what are you doing? I'm trying to understand you. There's a difference between saving someone and seeing them. Thomas tried to save you. I'm trying to see you. And what do you see? Kai studied her in the dim light filtering through the tower windows. I see someone who's turned isolation into an art form, who grows beauty in the middle of a curse, who caught a blessed crossbow bolt with her bare hands to protect someone she barely knows. I see strength that has nothing to do with serpent scales and everything to do with choosing to remain kind when the world has given you every reason to become cruel. Stop looking at me like that. Like what? Like I'm worth something. You are. I'm cursed. So am I. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Lyra's eyes widened. What? Kai held up his hand, and in the dim light, she could see faint scars tracing patterns across his palm. Not all curses involve transformation. Mine's more subtle. Everyone I touch feels what I feel, every emotion, every pain, every memory. I learned to control it, to shut down my emotions so completely that touching me is like touching stone. That's why I'm so good at breaking curses. I can handle them without feeling them. But you feel, I trained myself not to. For 5 years, I've been empty until what? Until a woman with golden eyes and poisoned tears made me want to feel something again. The rain hammered against the windows. Neither of them moved. We're quite a pair, Lyra finally said. The woman who kills with a touch and the man who can't feel without destroying. Or maybe we're perfect for each other. You can't poison someone who's already learned to be toxic. And I can't overwhelm someone who's already carrying 7 years of pain. That's not how relationships work. We're not exactly normal people, are we? She laughed, and for the first time it sounded genuine. No, we're definitely not that. 2 more days until the full moon, Kai said. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together, she repeated, tasting the word. I haven't said that in 7 years. How does it feel? Terrifying. She stood, heading back to her chambers, and maybe a little bit wonderful. That night they stayed in their separate rooms as promised, but both could feel the other's presence through the walls. A warmth that had nothing to do with fire and everything to do with not being alone. The curse writhed between them, testing this new dynamic. 2 days left. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Morrison arrived at the tower with a basket of supplies and a leather-bound journal that looked older than the tower itself. This belonged to Lord Aldrich's mother, she said, handing it up to Lyra through the basket pulley system. She died when he was young, but she was different, kind, nothing like what he became. I thought maybe it could help. Lyra opened the journal carefully, her gloved fingers tracing the delicate pages. Why now? Why help us now? Because I lost my daughter to a curse 15 years ago, Mrs. Morrison said quietly. Not a transformation curse, a wasting one. She faded a little more each day until she was just gone. I've lived with that cowardice ever since. I won't let fear rule me again. After she left, Lyra and Kai sat in the garden, she on her balcony, he below, reading the journal together. Listen to this, Lyra said. The serpent curse runs in our bloodline, but only manifests when awakened by betrayal and jealousy. My grandmother bore it, as did her mother. Each found a way to break it through. She stopped, her face paling. Through what? Through accepting the dual nature of their soul. The serpent is not an invader, but a guardian twisted by pain. To break the curse, one must embrace both aspects, human and serpent, and choose love over fear, at the moment of transformation. Kai stood, pacing. Aldrich knew. He knew it was in his bloodline, not yours. He transferred his family's curse to you. There's more. Lyra's voice shook. The curse can only be transferred through a blood ritual during a moment of emotional intensity. The transferer must genuinely believe they are saving the recipient, or the curse will rebound threefold. He thought he was saving you, Kai said slowly. In his twisted mind, cursing you to need him was saving you from a life without him. But it also means the curse is fighting itself. It's not meant for me. I'm not of his bloodline. That's why I can partially control it, why it hasn't fully consumed me, and why breaking it might be possible without destroying you. Lyra set the journal aside, her hands trembling. There's something else, a confession from his grandmother. She fell in love with someone her family deemed unsuitable. The curse manifested to protect her from making a mistake, but she chose him anyway, transformed fully during their wedding ceremony, and the curse broke. Because she chose love at her most monstrous moment. Tomorrow's the full moon. I know. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about your curse, she said quietly. You never finished telling me about it. Kai sat heavily on the bench below. What do you want to know? Everything. If we're going to face tomorrow together, I need to know what you're risking. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my mother was an empath. She could feel everyone's emotions, help them process pain. She was beloved in our village, until a witch fell in love with her. When she refused him, he cursed her gift to become a weapon. Every emotion she felt would be amplified and transmitted to anyone she touched. Joy became mania. Sadness became despair. Love became obsession. What happened to her? She isolated herself, tried to live without feeling anything. But when my father died, her grief, she hugged me goodbye, just once. I was 12. Her grief hit me like a physical blow, so intense I couldn't breathe. But it didn't stop there. It changed me. The curse passed to me, mutated. Now I don't just transmit emotions, I transmit everything. Memories, pain, experiences. Touch me, and you feel every moment of my life in an instant. That's why you shut down your emotions. If I feel nothing, I transmit nothing. I become safe. Lyra moved to the edge of her balcony, as close as she could get without leaving it. But you're feeling things now. I can see it. Yes. Aren't you afraid? Terrified. He looked up at her, but also alive. For the first time in 5 years, I'm alive. You did that. I didn't do anything. You existed. You showed me that isolation isn't safety. It's just another kind of death. What walls have you built to protect others from your pain? Sometimes the bravest thing is letting them choose whether to stay. Share your thoughts below. Tomorrow, during the transformation, Lyra said slowly, I won't be myself. The serpent will have full control. I might try to kill you. You won't. You can't know that. I can. Kai pulled out a vial from his pocket, filled with silvery liquid. Because I'll give you a reason not to. What is that? Something I've been working on. Not a cure, but a bridge. If I drink this, my curse will temporarily invert. Instead of transmitting what I feel, I'll absorb what others feel. I'll be able to feel your emotions without overwhelming you with mine. That's dangerous. Taking on someone else's emotions is exactly what you need. During the transformation, you'll be fighting the serpent alone. But if I can feel what you feel, I can help anchor your humanity. I can remind you who you are. Or you'll feel the serpent's hunger and lose yourself too. Maybe, but I think you're stronger than the curse. I think you've always been stronger. You just needed someone to believe it. Lyra's tears fell, hissing against the stone. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Anything. Are you doing this because you actually care about me, or because saving me might somehow save your sister retroactively? The question hung between them like a blade. Both, Kai finally admitted. At first, it was about redemption, proving I could save someone without destroying them. But now... He looked up at her, and his carefully maintained emotional walls cracked slightly. Now it's about you, the way you laugh when you think I'm not listening. The careful way you tend each plant like it matters. The strength it takes to choose kindness when the world has shown you none. I care about you, Lyra. Not the curse, not the challenge, you. Even if tomorrow, especially if tomorrow goes wrong, because at least we'll have tried. At least you won't face it alone. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The full moon was less than 24 hours away. I need to tell you something, Lyra said, about Thomas, about what really happened. You don't have to. I do, because you need to know what you're risking. She took a breath. Thomas didn't just die from the poison, the curse. It made me want to kill him. Not me, the serpent. It whispered that his death would feed it, make it stronger. And for one horrible moment, I wanted to listen. That's what I live with. Not just that he died, but that part of me wanted him too. That wasn't you, wasn't it? Where does the curse end and I begin? Tomorrow, if those same whispers come, if the serpent wants your death, then I'll trust the woman who caught a burning crossbow to save me. I'll trust the person who isolated herself for 7 years, rather than risk another life. I'll trust you, Lyra. The question is, will you trust yourself? She didn't answer, couldn't answer. Tomorrow would bring the answer, whether they wanted it or not. The last day before the full moon dawned clear and cold. Lyra found Kai in the garden before sunrise, planting something in the corner she'd left barren. "What are you doing?" He looked up, dirt smudged across his cheek in a way that made him look younger, less guarded. "Moonflowers. They bloom at night, particularly under the full moon. I thought, whatever happens tonight, something beautiful should come from it. You're planting flowers on what might be your last day alive?" "I'm planting hope on what I believe is the first day of something new." She climbed down from her balcony, something she'd started doing more often, the fear of being close to him slowly losing to the need for connection. "You're impossibly optimistic for someone who claims to feel nothing." "I lied about that." He continued planting, his movements careful and practiced. "I don't feel nothing. I feel everything. I just learnt to hide it. But around you, I can't seem to maintain the walls. Is that why you really came here? Not to break my curse, but to break your own isolation." He sat back on his heels, really looking at her. The morning sun caught the gold in her serpent eyes, making them luminous rather than frightening. Would that be so terrible? Two broken people finding each other? "We're not finding each other, Kai. We're colliding, and collisions usually end in destruction. Or transformation. Pressure makes diamonds, heat makes steel stronger. Pretty words won't change what happens tonight. No, but they might help us remember why we're trying." She knelt beside him, careful to keep her gloved hands away from his skin. "Teach me about the moonflowers." For the next hour they worked side by side, planting the night-blooming flowers. Their conversation drifted from gardening to memories, each sharing pieces of themselves they'd kept hidden. "I used to sing," Lyra admitted, "before the curse. My mother taught me lullabies from the old country, songs about brave women who turned into birds to escape cruel men. Sing for me. I can't. The curse changed my voice. There's always a hiss underneath now, like the serpent is trying to sing too. I'd like to hear it anyway." She was quiet for a moment, then began to sing softly. He was right. There was something else beneath her voice, a resonance that wasn't entirely human. But instead of being frightening, it was hauntingly beautiful, like two voices harmonizing across species. "That's beautiful," he said when she finished. "It's broken. Most beautiful things are. That's what makes them real." She looked at him then, really looked at him. "What happened to your walls, Cursebreaker? The ones that keep you safe? You happened. Every day you chip away at them just by existing, by being brave enough to stay kind when the world gave you every reason to become cruel. I'm not brave, I'm terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it." "Who told you that?" "My sister, the day before she walked into that blizzard." His voice caught slightly. "She said she wasn't brave enough to live in a world that felt too much, but you feel everything and choose to live anyway." "I don't live, I exist." "No." He turned to face her fully. "You live. You create beauty in your garden. You protect people who fear you. You sing lullabies to the moon when you think no one's listening. That's living, Lyra. That's choosing life every single day." She felt tears building, fought them back. "Stop making me hope." "Why?" "Because hope hurts worse than despair when it's taken away." "What if it isn't taken away? What if tomorrow we break this curse and you get to have a real life? Then what? I'm still the woman who was cursed for 7 years. The town still fears me. I don't know how to be normal anymore." "Neither do I," Kai said quietly. "I haven't felt normal since I was 12, but maybe we don't need normal. Maybe we just need possible." "You really think we can do this? Break the curse?" "I think you're going to break it. I'm just going to be there to remind you that you can. The sun climbed higher, warming the garden. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lyra asked, "What will you do after? And if we succeed?" "I don't know. I've never thought past the next curse to break." "You could stay." The words hung between them. "Stay," he repeated. "The town needs a healer. Someone who understands curses and pain and broken things. You could help people. Is that the only reason you want me to stay?" She pulled off one glove slowly, staring at her scaled hand. "No. Tell me the real reason." "Because for 7 years, I've been alone, and in just a few days, you've made me remember what it feels like to be seen. Not as a monster or a victim, but as myself. I don't want to lose that." "You won't lose it. Even if I leave, you'll never lose it. Once someone really sees you, you carry that with you forever." "But I want—" She stopped, unable to voice it. "What do you want, Lyra?" "I want to touch you," she whispered. "Just once. Without fear, without gloves, without death between us. I want to know what your hand feels like in mine." Kai reached out slowly, stopping just short of her scaled fingers. "Tomorrow. After we break this curse, the first thing we'll do is hold hands. I promise." "You can't promise that." "I just did." "What of the serpent?" "The serpent is part of you, and every part of you is worth saving. Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose broken pieces fit with yours. Who makes you feel whole despite the cracks? Let us know in the comments." As the sun began to set, they stood together in the garden, watching the sky turn brilliant shades of orange and red. The moon was already visible, a pale ghost waiting to become powerful. "It's time," Lyra said. "You should lock yourself in, Sen. The transformation will start soon." "I'm not locking myself anywhere. We do this together." "Kai." "Together, Lyra. Whatever happens, we face it together." She wanted to argue, wanted to protect him from what was coming. But looking at his face, determined and unafraid, she realized this was his choice to make. "Together," she agreed, and felt something shift inside her. Not the curse, but something else. Something that felt dangerously like love beginning to bloom, as unexpected and determined as moonflowers in a cursed garden. The moon continued to rise, and somewhere deep inside, the serpent began to wake. The transformation began as the moon reached its zenith. Lyra fell to her knees in the garden, her body convulsing as scales erupted across her skin, like spreading ice. The sound was horrible, bones breaking and reforming, flesh tearing and reknitting into something ancient and terrible. "Lyra!" Kai reached for her, but she scrambled back, her voice already distorting. "The chains," she gasped. "In the tower. Iron chains blessed by priests. Use them." He ran, taking the stairs 3 at a time, finding the chains exactly where she'd said. By the time he returned, Lyra was half transformed, her lower body already beginning to elongate into a serpent's tail. Her face was still human, but her eyes had gone completely gold, pupils turned to vertical slits. "I can't." "Hold it." Her voice was barely recognizable. "The serpent. It's stronger tonight. It knows you're here. It wants—" "What does it want?" "You," she hissed, and it wasn't clear if it was Lyra or the serpent speaking. "It wants to taste your curse. 2 curses combined would make it unstoppable." Kai wrapped the chains around the base of a stone pillar, creating a barrier between them. "Fight it, Lyra. Remember who you are." But the woman he knew was disappearing. Her body continued to change, growing massive, scales replacing skin until only her face remained partially human. The serpent that emerged was magnificent and terrifying. 20 feet of muscled coils covered in scales that shifted from black to green to gold in the moonlight. When it opened its mouth, fangs dripped with venom that sizzled when it hit the ground. "Lyra," Kai said firmly, "I know you're in there." The serpent's great head turned to him, and when it spoke, the voice was layered. Lyra's underneath, the serpent's on top. "She's sleeping, dreaming of a life without poison." I'm keeping her safe from the pain of what she'll never have. You're lying, she's fighting you. She was, but then she realized the truth, that loving you would only lead to your death, so she gave in. Let me take control, it's better this way. Kai pulled out the vial of silvery liquid. Then I'll bring her back. You drink that, and you'll feel everything she feels. 7 years of isolation, 7 years of self-hatred, the weight of every life she's taken. It will destroy you. Maybe, or maybe sharing that burden will lighten it. He drank the potion in one swallow. The effect was immediate and devastating. Kai's curse inverted, and suddenly he could feel everything Lyra had been holding back. The loneliness hit first, a crushing weight that made him gasp. Then came the grief, wave after wave of it. Thomas's death. The others who'd tried to save her, the life she'd lost. But underneath it all, he felt something else. Love. Not romantic love. Not yet, but love for her garden, for the town despite their fear, for the memory of her mother, and threaded through it, growing stronger, her feelings for him. Hope and fear tangled together, desire and terror of that desire. Stop, the serpent hissed, coiling tighter. You're hurting her. No, Kai gasped, falling to his knees under the weight of her emotions. I'm sharing it. She doesn't have to carry this alone anymore. The serpent lunged. The blessed chains held, but barely. The impact shook the entire tower, sending stones tumbling from the walls. The serpent pulled back, preparing to strike again. You want to save her? The serpent laughed, a sound like scales on stone. Then give me your curse. Let me taste that emptiness you've cultivated. 2 curses together. We'd be unstoppable. That's not her talking. Isn't it? Ask yourself, why did she really let you stay? Not for love, for power. She sensed your curse, knew it could make her stronger. She's been drawing you in, making you care, so that when she takes your power, you won't fight. Kai's confidence wavered. The emotions he was feeling from Lyra were so tangled, so complex. Was their manipulation mixed with the affection? Had he been so desperate for connection that he'd missed the warning signs? You're doubting, the serpent purred. Good, the truth hurts, doesn't it? She's not the victim you thought she was. She's the monster everyone says she is. You're wrong. Am I? Then why did she really save you from Aldrich's crossbow? Not to protect you, to keep you alive long enough to steal your curse. She needs you functional for the transfer to work. The doubt grew stronger. Everything could be interpreted differently through this lens. Her reluctance to let him close. Not protection, but calculation. Her sharing her story. Not trust, but manipulation. I can see you thinking, the serpent continued, reconsidering every moment. That's wise. But it's too late. You've already drunk the potion. You're connected to her now. When I devour you, your curse will flow into us naturally. The serpent struck again. This time, the chain snapped. Kai had a moment to realize his mistake. He'd been so focused on the emotional connection, he'd forgotten the physical danger. The serpent's coils wrapped around him, not tight enough to crush, but firm enough to hold. He could feel the scales against his skin, cool and smooth. Last chance, the serpent whispered, its great head lowering until they were eye to eye. Give me your curse willingly, and I'll make your death quick. Refuse, and I'll take it anyway. But you'll suffer as Thomas suffered. Lyra, Kai said, ignoring the serpent, speaking to the woman he knew was trapped inside. I don't care if you manipulated me. I don't care if part of you wanted my power. I care that you fought it, that you've been fighting it for 7 years. You're not the monster. You're the cage keeping it contained. And you're so tired of being the cage. Something flickered in those golden eyes. I know you're tired, he continued. I know you want to let go, but not like this. Not with my blood on your conscience. You've carried enough guilt. Don't add mine to it. She can't hear you, the serpent said, but there was uncertainty in its voice now. She can, and she's fighting you. I can feel it through our connection. Every word I say makes her stronger, and you weaker. The serpent's coils tightened. Then I'll silence you. Go ahead. Kill me, but know that the moment you do, the connection between us will flood you with my death. She'll feel everything, my last breath, my last thought, and that thought will be that I forgive her, that I choose to believe she's worth saving. Can you handle her feeling that? Can you handle her knowing someone died, believing in her goodness? The serpent hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, Kai saw tears sliding down the serpent's scaled face. Not poison tears, real tears. Lyra, he whispered. Come back to me. The serpent screamed, a sound of rage and pain that shattered the remaining windows. Its coils loosened just enough for Kai to breathe. You fool, it hissed. You've doomed us both. She's fighting me, but she's not strong enough. When she fails, when I win, she'll never forgive herself for your death. Then she'd better not fail. The moon reached its peak, bathing them both in silver light. And in that light, Kai saw something impossible. The serpent was crying human tears. And where they fell, flowers began to bloom. The serpent's coils had loosened, but Kai remained trapped within them, feeling the war raging inside the creature through their emotional connection. It was like being caught between two storms. Lyra's desperate fight for control and the serpent's ancient hunger. Please, the serpent's voice had changed, becoming more desperate. Leave now. If you go, I'll let her surface long enough to say goodbye. 1 minute of humanity before the moon sets. It's more than she's had in years. No. You stubborn fool, don't you understand? She's choosing to let me win because it's the only way to save you. Every second you stay, you're torturing her with hope she can't afford. Through their connection, Kai felt the truth of it. Lyra was holding herself back, not fighting with full strength, because she feared what breaking free might cost. She'd rather remain a monster forever than risk his life for even a chance at freedom. Lyra, he said, not to the serpent but to the consciousness he could feel beneath. You told me about your mother's roses, how thorns aren't cruel, they're necessary. You've been all thorns for 7 years, protecting everyone else. When do you get to bloom? The serpent shuddered, its massive body rippling with conflicting impulses. Inside the serpent's mind, Lyra was drowning in sensation. She could feel everything through Kai's inverted curse. His faith in her, his fear for her, and underneath it all, something she hadn't expected, love. Not the desperate, possessive love that had cursed her, but something patient and steady, like roots growing deep into earth. Let me protect him, the serpent whispered in her mind. I'm trying to save him from you, from what you'll become if you fight me and lose. I've already lost, Lyra responded. I lost the moment I chose isolation over risk. I lost when I decided I was too dangerous to love. You are too dangerous. You'll kill him. Maybe. Or maybe I'll finally learn what my mother knew, that love isn't safe. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be brave. She began to fight in earnest then. Not against the serpent, but with it. Instead of trying to suppress the transformation, she embraced it while holding tight to her humanity. She was both, woman and serpent, cursed and blessing, monster and protector. The serpent's body began to convulse. What's happening? Kai gasped, feeling the emotional tsunami through their connection. She's not fighting me, the serpent said, wonder in its voice. She's accepting me. No one has ever... We were always enemies, host and parasite, but she's making us partners. Because that's who she is, Kai said. She doesn't destroy the things that hurt her. She tends them, like her garden. She makes them beautiful. The transformation wasn't like the others. Instead of violent convulsions, it was almost graceful. The serpent's massive coils began to shrink, scales receding in patterns that looked deliberate, artistic. As the creature became smaller, more human features emerged, but not entirely human. What stood before him in the moonlight was neither fully woman nor serpent, but something in between. Lyra's human form had returned, But traces of the serpent remained, scales that traced her skin like jewelry, eyes that held both human warmth and serpent wisdom, and a grace that belonged to both species. "I'm still cursed," she said, her voice carrying that dual harmony she'd had while singing. "No," Kai said, standing slowly. "You're transformed. There's a difference. I could still poison you with a touch. Could you? Or is that just another story you've told yourself?" She looked at her hands, human in shape, but traced with scales that caught the moonlight. "I don't know. There's only one way to find out." He held out his hand. "Kai, no. If you're wrong, then I'll die knowing I was right about you. That you're worth the risk. That's not romantic. It's stupid." "Maybe, but I've been smart for 5 years, and it left me empty. I'd rather be stupid with you than smart alone. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. When did you last choose courage over safety? Share your story below." Lyra stared at his outstretched hand. Through their emotional connection, she could feel his certainty, but also his fear. He was afraid, terrified actually, but doing it anyway. For her. "If this kills you, I'll never forgive myself. And if you don't try, you'll never forgive yourself either. At least this way we'll know." "Why?" she asked, tears sliding down her cheeks, human tears now, salt instead of acid. "Why are you risking everything for me?" "Because," Kai said simply, "in all my years of breaking curses, I've never met someone who made me want to be cursed alongside them. If touching you means death, then it's a death worth choosing. But I don't think it will kill me. I think it will save us both." "How can you know that?" "I can't, but I can choose to believe it. The same way you chose to believe you could be both serpent and woman. The same way you chose to protect instead of destroy. Love is just another choice, Lyra. And I choose you, all of you. Scales, poison, thorns, and all." The moon was beginning to set. Soon, the transformation window would close, and she'd be locked in whatever form she chose until the next full moon. "Last chance to run," she whispered. "I'm not running, not from you, never from you." Lyra looked at her transformed hand, dangerous and beautiful, monstrous and miraculous. Then she looked at Kai, who stood before her, with his hand outstretched and his heart open, offering her something she'd thought she'd never have again. The choice to be touched, to be loved, to be human in all the ways that mattered. "Together?" she asked. "Together?" She reached out slowly, her scaled fingers trembling. The space between their hands narrowed. 6 inches, 3 inches, 1 inch. The moment before contact stretched eternal, filled with 7 years of fear and loneliness, but also with hope as fragile and persistent as moonflowers blooming in cursed ground. "I love you," she whispered, not sure if she was saying it to him or to herself, or to the serpent that was no longer separate from her, but part of her. "I know," he whispered back. "I can feel it." Their fingers touched. Their fingers touched. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, light exploded between them, not painful, but warm, like sunrise after the longest night. Kai felt Lyra's emotions flood through him, not the crushing weight of before, but something else. Joy. Pure, unfiltered joy at human contact after 7 years of isolation. And Lyra felt Kai's curse activate. But instead of being overwhelmed by his memories and pain, she felt them settle into her like missing pieces of a puzzle. His loneliness matching hers, his fear of connection echoing her own, his desperate hope that love could exist between broken things. They stood there, hands clasped, as around them the garden began to bloom impossibly. The moonflowers Kai had planted burst open all at once, their white petals glowing in the fading moonlight. The roses turned from red to gold to silver, colors that shouldn't exist in nature but did here, in this moment of transformation. "I'm not dead," Kai breathed, wonder in his voice. "Neither am I," Lyra laughed, and it was the sound of chains breaking. "I'm touching you and we're both still here." "How?" She looked at their joined hands. his scarred from years of curse breaking, hers scaled but beautiful. Because the curse was never just about poison. It was about isolation, about believing I was too dangerous to love. But you can't poison someone who's already carrying the same venom. Our curses, they recognize each other, like calling to like, your emptiness and my isolation. They're the same wound, just dressed differently. The moon was setting now, its silver light fading to grey. As it disappeared below the horizon, Lyra's form shimmered once more. The scales didn't disappear. They'd never disappear completely, but they settled into patterns that looked deliberate, decorative, war paint rather than armor. "I'm still part serpent," she said. "And I'm still cursed to transmit everything I feel," Kai replied. "But maybe that's not a curse anymore. Maybe it's just who we are." Broken? Matched. From the base of the tower came voices, the townspeople, drawn by the light show. Mrs. Morrison's voice rose above the others. "Lyra? Child, are you all right?" Lyra looked at Kai, uncertainty flickering across her features. "They'll still fear me. Then we'll teach them not to, together." Hand in hand, they descended the tower. The crowd backed away initially, then stopped as they saw their joined hands, the way Kai's touch didn't kill him. "The curse?" Mrs. Morrison asked. "Transformed," Lyra said. "Not broken, but changed. I'm still part serpent. I'll always be part serpent. But I'm not dangerous anymore. Not to anyone who doesn't mean harm." "How?" someone called out. Kai squeezed her hand. "The same way all curses break, in the end. Someone chose to see the person beneath the monster, and someone else chose to believe they were worth seeing." Lord Aldrich pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with rage. "This is impossible. The curse can't be broken, else. It was designed to make me need you," Lyra finished calmly. "To make me so desperate for human contact that I'd accept even your poisonous version of love. But you made a mistake, Aldrich. You gave me a curse that could only be broken by true acceptance. And you're incapable of accepting anyone but yourself. You're still a monster, look at you." "I am looking," said a small voice. A child, no more than 6, stepped forward. "She's pretty, like a dragon princess." Lyra knelt down, careful not to get too close. "Thank you, little one. Can you still make the flowers grow big?" "Yes." "Good. Mama needs medicine flowers for my baby brother. He's sick." The crowd murmured. They'd forgotten, in their fear, how much Lyra's garden had provided for them, even during her isolation. "I'll grow the best medicine flowers you've ever seen," Lyra promised. "This isn't over," Aldrich snarled, but he was already backing away. The crowd wasn't looking at Lyra with fear anymore. They were looking at him with disgust. "Yes, it is," Mrs. Morrison said firmly. "Lord Aldrich, by the power vested in me as mayor of this town, a position I've held for longer than you've been alive, I hereby banish you for the crime of malicious cursing. You have until dawn to leave. You can't. I can and I am. Unless you'd prefer we contact the royal authorities about your use of illegal transformation curses." He fled, his expensive boots slipping on the dew-wet grass. As dawn broke properly, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the townspeople began to disperse. Some nodded to Lyra, others actually smiled. It would take time to rebuild trust, but the foundation was there. Finally, only Kai and Lyra remained in the garden, still holding hands. "So what happens now?" Lyra asked. "Now we learn how to be human together, how to be cursed together, how to be ourselves together. That sounds complicated. The best things usually are." She leaned against him, marveling at the simple pleasure of human contact. "Will you stay? Not just for a few days, but stay?" "Where else would I go? I'm a curse breaker who found a curse that doesn't need breaking, just understanding. Besides," he gestured to the garden around them, "someone needs to help you tend all this. The moonflowers alone are going to need constant care. Is that the only reason? He turned to face her fully, his free hand coming up to cup her scaled cheek. No. I'm staying because for the first time in 5 years, I want to feel everything, every emotion, every moment, every sunrise and sunset, and I want to feel it all with you. Even the painful parts? Especially the painful parts. They make the beautiful parts mean something. Love isn't about finding someone perfect, it's about finding someone whose imperfections complement yours. What imperfections have become beautiful when shared with someone who understands? Tell us your story of unexpected love in the comments. As the sun climbed higher, warming the garden that had witnessed so much pain and transformation, Lyra began to sing. The serpent harmony in her voice no longer sounded broken but whole. Two natures united in one song. Kai joined her, his voice untrained but earnest. And their harmonies tangled together like the vines in her garden, separate but inseparable, growing stronger for the intertwining. Mrs. Morrison, watching from her bakery window, smiled and began kneading dough for celebration bread. The child who'd called Lyra a dragon princess drew pictures to show her baby brother. And throughout the town, people began to tell a different story, not of a woman cursed for refusing a lord, but of a woman who found love by accepting all of herself, and a man who found himself by choosing to feel again. The moonflowers in the garden, which should have closed with the dawn, remained open all day, as if they too understood that some transformations transcend the normal rules of nature. That night, as Lyra and Kai sat in the garden planning which healing herbs to grow for the town's medicine supply, she asked, "Do you think we're cured?" "No," he said, pressing a kiss to her scaled hand. "I think we're exactly who we're supposed to be. Cursed, blessed, and everything in between. Together? Always together. And in the garden where poison and beauty grew side by side, where moonflowers bloomed out of season and roses grew thorns like armor, two souls who had thought themselves too dangerous to love discovered that sometimes the greatest curse is the one we place on ourselves, and the greatest blessing is finding someone who helps us break it. Thank you for joining Kai and Lyra on their journey from isolation to connection, from curse to transformation. Remember, we all carry our own curses, the stories we tell ourselves about what we deserve. But love, real love, sees past the scales to the soul beneath. May you find someone who makes your thorns feel like roses, and may you be brave enough to let them.